Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jill Alberg-Yo. I curate Native art with Juan Lucero at NIA, Minneapolis Institute of Art, and it is a delight and honor to be here this evening. We look forward to all of your questions and thoughts after this beautiful panel discussion. I'd like to introduce the moderator, who is Juan Lucero, is our Shakapisu Mdewakanton Fellow, and he's been working on many projects with us, and he did a wonderful exhibition that he's going to talk a little bit about. So welcome, everyone, and Juan, take it away.
Thank you, everybody, and welcome. This talk is entitled "From the Feast Table," so I'd like everybody to pull up a table up to the feast table, and we're going to have a conversation tonight. So this is based on the exhibit that I curated up in Gallery 255 in the museum here. It's called, and Dr. Swina, I apologize if I don't get this right, but it's called Parska Shada, which means dance. And I got Shada from Mr. Chris Velarde over here. So the exhibit itself is based on paintings that are in our collection. It's 15 paintings, I believe. All of dance figures with painters from Tanita Pena, Pablito Velarde, and other Pueblo painters that are focusing on dance. So what I wanted to do with this is I grew up in New Mexico. I'm from New Mexico. I'm from Isleta, Pueblo. We're just about 10 minutes south of Albuquerque. So I moved here in 2013, and one of the things I really missed about home, about the community that I come from, is the dances and the feast days that I don't get to actually go to very much anymore. So I wanted to create this gallery to kind of be an immersive environment for people that possibly may be living in the Twin Cities that are from the Pueblo communities, to come and visit and maybe alleviate some of that longing for home. So one of the things that I thought of in this exhibit, to create this exhibit, one of the memories that came up for me the most is I really wanted people to feel the same way I did when I was at my grandma's house, and I would be standing there getting ready to go over to the village and hear the songs and the drums at a distance. You could hear the drums. It was really faint, and as you get closer, you get kind of immersed in that environment when you get close to the village. So that was my guiding memory through this exhibit and creating this. And one of the things that I really wanted to do is I wanted those stories of those dances to be told from community members. So I reached out to a few community members like Mr. Chris Velarde and Dr. Swina here in order to get their stories told. Because one thing that happens with a lot of Pueblo art and Pueblo communities is that we're often under the academic microscope, academic lens. A lot of our stories are told through that lens. So I didn't want that to happen with this. I wanted to tell the stories straight from the community members and straight from maybe relatives of the artists that were displayed in the exhibit. So I'd like to introduce to everybody two of the contributing authors for some of the labels. We have Dr. Joe Swina and Chris Velarde, and with them they can introduce their partners and as they introduce themselves. So Dr. Swina, would you like to introduce yourself?
I am Joseph Swina, coming to you from Coche de Pueblo here in New Mexico. And I have with me my wife, Lorraine. Been married for 55 years. So both of us are educators. Lorraine retired from elementary school teaching in APS, Albuquerque Public Schools, and I from the University of New Mexico. I'm a professor emeritus. And here in the Pueblo, I've served as the governor a couple of times. And maybe that's plenty to share.
And Chris, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Unseng iti now to how I saw who are being Nambit o Nabimani kana how I Chris already now sabi here being a hapo mu Nabitara sabi namu Nabijia hapo namu now hane hapo winge Nambit o ke alimu and now in Nabitu e namu. Good evening, people. My Tewa name is Soho Ping, which means Father in the Mountain. And my English name is Chris Filardi. I am half Apache from the Jicarilla Nation, as well as Santa Clara Pueblo. My father was Apache and my mother was from the Pueblo of Santa Clara, and I live here in Santa Clara Pueblo. I also belong to the Badger clan, and I have my, as we say in our Tewa way, this is my little brother, Alden Sean, and he's here to join us. And like Dr. Sweeney, I think I'll go that far, and I'll let Sean introduce himself.
Good evening. My name is Alden Sean Chatu. My Indian name is Jansede, which is Willowbird. I too am from the Pueblo of Santa Clara. My mother is from here. My father is Navajo. I have attended Washington State University, where I received my degree in civil engineering. And currently I work for the New Mexico Department of Transportation.
Thank you. So like everything else in this exhibit, I didn't want this talk or this conversation more to better describe it. It's a conversation. I didn't want it to be an academic focus. I want us to be able to share kind of freely about our memories and our experiences going to feast days and going to dances and experiencing the emotions that we felt when we see the dances. So that's really what I really want everybody to kind of take in. I want our audience to be able to take these emotions and then really experience that, even though you're not there in the Pueblos or there to actually see the dances. I mean, there's so many things that we can talk about, and I want to say, if we'll be taking questions at the end of this, but there are questions that we may not be able to answer, and there are questions that we may not be comfortable answering as fellow community members. And I would like Dr. Sweeney, if you would like to give us a good background or a brief background on feast days and Pueblo dances, if you like, and then we can actually, after that, we'll talk about your guys' contributions to the exhibit.
Okay, I'll be happy to do that. You know, in the course of the year here in the community, Coach de Pueblo, and I'm sure Santa Clara likewise, we have many dances. We have winter dances, spring dances, summer dances, and so forth. But what we call the feast day is the biggest dance of all, or at least it's the dance that we have open to the public. And for us, it's in the middle of summer. It's July 14th, and Chris has danced with us many, many times. And Chris, your feast day is on August 12th.
Correct.
Yes. So on that day, of course, it is open to the public, and for us here in Cochiti, it is not just a one-day event. It's gosh, we start about a month in advance composing songs. The male elders in the community go every night. Nowadays we have Saturdays and Sundays off, but we begin right after Sandia Pueblo Feast, which is the 13th of June. We start ours to give us that month to get songs ready, to get everything put together and so forth. But the day of the feast day, of course, is the biggest day for us here in the Pueblo. Our community balloons to probably 3-4 times the population because of the guests coming in from the outside. Native for sure, but also non-natives. You know, we have many people who come from a far way. You know, we have people from out of the country, from other states and so forth. So, but that big day is something very special for us here and at Santa Clara, and I'm sure Chris can add to this, but the feast day table is, of course, a very special place for all of us on that day. We not only have the dance, but we have our homes that are open to the public who come and join us to have food at the table. And we have a variety of foods, of course, that we have prepared. And my wife can probably speak to that a whole lot better than I can as in the course of the evening. But it is something that we share with the public. And so a variety of foods from traditional chili and beans and rice and squash to, you know, the hams and the yeah, variety of things that are just there for people to come in and enjoy. And, you know, we don't share, we don't charge anything, of course, and it often surprises people who come from the dominant world who have to pay for everything. And they just really, truly appreciate, I think, having the opportunity to come into our homes and enjoy our foods and so forth. And in the process, of course, we have a lot of conversation, get to know each other. Some people we never met before, others they keep coming back year after year and so on. And so I'll go ahead and stop there and then pass it all over to Chris, and he can add to the description of the feast day. We can come back and talk a bit more on it too. Chris?
Just like Dr. Sweeney had said, you know, our feast day is always exciting time for us. You know, as the day approaches, I think we start getting excited. We start getting butterflies in our stomach because there's so much preparations to be done. You know, there's the cleaning of the village. You know, they call all the men over. We have to clean the village, sweep it, rake it, you know, make it nice for the people when they come. You know, and then there's also cleaning of the church. You know, the ladies will go and they'll clean the church. And then here you are, you know, you have to go look in your trunk and get all your regalia that you're going to need for the dances, you know. And it's a time when family comes home, you know.
That's right.
My uncle used to come from Louisiana, and they will come a few days before, and night before, everybody's sitting in there. We're all cutting meat, you know. Everybody will cut meat and help grandma get things ready, you know. And it seems like everybody's feast day was always at grandma's house. You know, grandma was the sole cook, keeper, and boss of the whole event, you know. And like mentioned earlier, the conversations, the people that showed up, people talking to one another, you know. One time I had some Jewish people at my house, and they were talking to some other people from another Pueblo, and they became friends. And next time when these people from the other Pueblo had their feast, who was there? These Jewish people were there because they got invited. And that's how we spread, you know, all this happiness and goodness. You know, you get to know people and they invite you to their feast, and then you go and you taste the food, you know. You see the difference between northern Pueblos and southern Pueblos, the different types of food, you know. One of our popular foods here is garbanzo soup. I don't know if you know about garbanzo, but they're actually chickpeas. And what we do is we clean them and we make them into a stew. And Santa Clara and so far the other Tewa Pueblos, we're the only ones that really make the garbanzo soup with beef and bones in it, you know, and it's everybody's favorite. So when people from the South, especially from Isleta, when they come up, they really start down on the garbanzo soup because it's not something that they have down there, you know. And then like us, when we go down to Cochiti or down to Jemez or down to Santo Domingo, the red chili bone stew. Oh, that is, you know, you just eat the whole bone and all, you know. So feast day is always about eating, as you can see. We're always feasting, you know. And especially in the summertime when we go from Pueblo to Pueblo, you know, we go as spectators. When we sit there, you know, the whole idea is we listen to the songs. And I learned this from my grandfather. I would take him with me. I always took my grandpa with me. And he would sit in his chair and he'd sit in back and he closed his eyes, you know. And when I first started taking him, so I would poke him. I said, "Grandpa, wake up, you know." And he said, I'm not sleeping, you know. I'm just sitting here listening to the music, you know. And I always thought that it was important to watch the dance. But as I became an elder and I started going to other places, you know, I sit there and yes, I watch the dances because I know people, but other times I sit back and I listen, you know, and I imagine what the songs are about because they're probably similar to our songs. You know, they talk about the rain, they talk about the crops, they talk about the mountains, you know. All this is related to the relation to the corn dance, the corn maidens, you know. And you listen and you ask for prayers. And this is what it's about. You know, you're asking the dancers to submit your prayers, you know, to the creator so that everything will be well, you know. But this last 2 years have been very, very difficult for us because nothing has been happening. You know, we're trying to take care of our elders and our pueblos in our villages. So a feast day has been canceled to the point where there were no dances. But at least this year, you know, I got to bring my family home and, you know, we came and we had feasts in our house. We had the regular feast food and everything, you know, but the dancing and the singing and the drums, that's the part that's missing. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, I guess maybe for those who don't know, we've always had these dances, like our elders say, you know, since time immemorial. You know, we've always had these dances. It's always a circular time of, okay, we do certain dances in the winter, then it comes springtime and we do other dances, and then come summertime we have, you know, dances throughout the year. It's when the Spaniards came through, they gave each pueblo a patron saint. Our patron saint happens to be Saint Clare. So I believe it's her canonization day, which is August the 12th.
Yes.
And that's why we have our feast day on August the 12th. It's every year, August the 12th, no matter what day it falls on, you know, just gotta remember August the 12th.
So I like to ask my wife to add to the ladies' perspective on the feast.
Definitely.
Oh my goodness, it's way before feast day. I have to tell you that. We have 4 daughters and I have to make all their dresses, their underdresses, you know, that they wear under the mantas. And so I have to say, what color do you want this year? What kind of trim do you want in your dress? And so there I am sewing on my sewing machine, trying to get their customs all ready and their mantas all pressed and ready to wear. And then as far as the feast day, Chris, I have to tell you, we cook garbanzos here too.
Oh, okay.
You'll have to come and try some over here.
I
It's
will.
our grandkids' favorite food. But anyway, planning starts quite early, way before feast day. I'd say about maybe 3 weeks before feast day. My larger family, my sisters-in-law, my kids, we have 4 daughters. We get together and plan our menu. And so each one will say, okay, I'll make the hooked, which is a red chili. It's beef and red chili. Or somebody will say, okay, I'll make the bone stew, the kind you like, Chris.
Yes.
That we prepare with roasted corn, which is roasted on coals, and other stews, green chili stew. But we all contribute, you know. Some will offer, I'll buy the bones, you know, for the bone stews, or I'll buy the chili, or I'll buy the green chili, and everybody will say, I'll make this and make that. So it's an effort that's family. We all pull together. And so, and then baking is done at my house. So everybody comes, and so I have to have a breakfast ready, and we bake at least 50 to 75 pounds for feast day. And
This is the day before.
yeah, at least 2 days before. And we bake bread, we make prune pies, we make bakawet, which is cookies. So it tires me out just thinking about it. But It's wonderful. And most of the time I'm home, even on feast day, maybe at the end of the day, I'll get to watch maybe 1 or 2 dances, and that's pretty much it. You know, then at the end of the day, everybody comes to the house and we all relax and eat and laugh. And we're so tired, but we're just happy that it's done. And it's a wonderful day.
I think that was one of the questions I was going to ask everybody is like, what's your favorite foods? Because I know in Isleta, one of the things that my dad always said that when he was a little kid, the kids used to tease him because he was from Isleta, and they would say he was an Isleta chili eater. That's one of the things that I think we're known for is our hot chili. We're always making hot chili. But one of the things when you're talking about the bread, that's one of the memories and one of the most vivid things that I could think of when I was creating this exhibit is I could smell the bread. I was thinking of the feast days and being at my aunt's house or at my grandma's house, and I could just smell the bread and the cookies and the pies. I could smell the wood burning outside in the hornos. Like I was like transporting myself there because I could really, I miss it, but I could really still experience it. It was like, what does George Strait say? The transcendental meditation. I was transporting myself there because it was like, I was like, that's what I really missed the food, and I really missed like the bread. So I love that you brought up the bread because that's the one of my favorite times, even especially as a little kid, running around and with my grandma and all my aunts just all baking and talking and getting mad at each other. It's all just happy memory because they get mad at each other and then they're just happy afterwards. So it's just so awesome that you brought that up. I really love that part.
Well, you know, I was going to say on baking day, we usually will break a couple of loaves just to sample it with butter and enjoy.
One of the other famous questions for us is, I mean, there's the red or green question, but then it's like, do you want the round or bumpy bread? The ones with the horns, you just break off the horn and put a bunch of butter on there.
You can just break it off and eat it.
I used to work for the public schools here in Milwaukee, and I used to try to kind of bring the board members to Indian communities. And one time I invited a school board member to my house for feast, and she came over and she brought her family, and they sat down and they just couldn't believe their eyes at the spread that was at the table, you know. So after it was, you know, after they got finished eating, they were leaving. And it's always tradition in our house when guests leave, you like Mrs. Sweeney said, you make a lot of bread, you always give them a bread to take home. There's something about bread, taking it home, the relatives or guests that come, they just love it, you know. So when I gave her bread, you know, she was very thankful. And she asked me, she said, how do you guys do it? I says, what do you mean? She said, my daughter counted 35 different entrees on your table. How do you do it? And I said, most of it's cooked here. I said, we have relatives that come and they bring food as well. We have guests that come every year, and they have learned that if they come every year, they always bring something to help with the food, because that day we feed tons and tons of people nonstop, you know. And she asked which were the traditional foods. I was telling her the red chili, green chili, garbanzo, chico soup. And I told her, I said, we even added 2 more traditional dishes to our table. And she said, did I taste them? I said, yes, potato salad and jello. They have now become part of our traditional food list, you know, because nothing beats eating red chili with potato salad and oven bread. My favorite.
Right. And it can't be feast without jello.
One of the things I think became part of that traditional things is pretzel dessert. I don't know if you guys have that. It's sour cream and cream cheese with strawberry jello with candied pretzels at the bottom. Oh man, you guys have to go to Isleta now.
Okay.
You know,
People are always experimenting when it comes to desserts, you know.
In Cochiti, we have a community feeding right behind the kiva. So when we finish the first 4 dances in the morning, it puts us about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you know, and if we start about 9:30, 10 o'clock, and by the time we have lunch, it's about 2. And so the dancers, because now we're all spread out because of our homes out of the plaza area.
We live in the suburbs.
We live way out here. So that we can feed everybody and have the dancers close enough around the Pueblo for the lunchtime, because there's a couple more dances that follow. We have a community kitchen, we call it, behind the kiva, Chris, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we
Orgy family.
finish our dances, our side, we have two kivas. We have the pumpkin and the turquoise here in Cochiti. And so the turquoise, our side, my side, is the senior of the 2 kivas. And so we dance first, we finish for lunch first, and we finish the end of the day first, because we switch off with the other kiva. But we all head over to the community feeding place. And so the dancers, of course, come in tired, thirsty, but you know, as a dancer, that you can't overeat at that table, because you've got your own table at home for one, but you can't afford to, you know, just gorge yourself, because you've got another 2 dances in the middle of July, you know, July 14th, if it's near 100 degrees, and if the rain is just kind of hanging there and teasing you, you know, you just need to go back out there with plenty of water and just hang on for just another couple dances and have the biggest meal that you can imagine at the evening table back home. And so for people who don't have or friends, visitors, whether they're Anglo, Hispanic, Black, whomever comes to the Pueblo, they're always welcome there at this community table. And it's prepared by the war chiefs, the senior war chief and his lieutenant, and the family of the 2. And so they, you know, they get a little assistance from the tribe to in terms of some money to buy the meat, and so it's just a big feast day there too as well.
Well, it's funny that you talk about that, because it's like, even if you go to somebody else's Pueblo, or to a Pueblo and don't know anybody there, you can spark up a conversation with just about anybody that's from that village, and they'll invite you over to go eat. Like, not knowing who you are or having any idea of your background, and they'll just invite you into their home, and you can have you can eat. And I think one of the unspoken rules that people don't tell you, if you've never been to a feast day and you're going from house to house, is just eat a little bit at each house. Because if you have a full meal at each house, you're not gonna feel good at the end of the day.
Right. I have a story on that with it was, you know, feast day several years ago. These people had come to my aunt's house. My aunt has a house in the village right next to the kiva, and these people had come in and, you know, sat down waiting to eat. And you know, the family's looking at this. Well, who is these people? You know, do you know them? Do you know them? No. So they sat down. They started eating, and the one gentleman asked me, "Well, hey, how is RJ doing?" And you're like, "I don't know any RJ." You know what I mean? And like, oh, well, he told us to come and eat, and like, he said the house right next to this tree. It's like, oh, okay, well, we don't know an RJ, but you know, that's fine. You know, the family came and ate, and they left, and yeah, after they left, and everybody starts asking, well, who were those people? I don't know, you know. And so that's just, you know, the kind of an open door policy. You really don't have to know anybody, you know, just to kind of walk in and say, hey, I'm here to eat.
I think from
one of the tricks to entering a home is to go in and say, may I use your bathroom? Anyway, so.
or else you go
My
in and
wife
says,
tells
does,
me that
is-
one of the things that irritates the cooks and the servers there is, when non-Indians come in particular Anglo people, they love to sit at the table, make conversation,
Take their time eating.
take their time eating when there's a whole bunch of other people who need to get to the table. And we're trying to give them prompts.
You can
So
take
it's,
your dessert to
you
the living room.
I think besides talking about food, coming from a dancer's point of view, I'd like to share a little bit about that. Every year when July 10th is coming near, my heart gets excited and I get butterflies in my stomach, and my family already knows, and they say, are you going to dance? And I said, what? Are you going to dance for Coach Tiffy's? I said, well, what do you think? Well, don't they start practice tonight? I said, yes. I said, well, you don't have anything ready? I said, I'll get ready, So here I am, digging through the trunk, looking for my red shoes and getting my stuff ready. And as I go down, I can just feel this excitement in me, because once when I get down there for practice, what excites me is to see old friends. When I first went down to Coach T 35 plus years ago, I knew maybe one or two people. And over the years, I got to know more and more people. And when I go down, they ask me, how have you been, Chris? I haven't seen you in a while, and I feel welcome. It makes me feel good inside, and I like to make new friends, and sometimes it's sad, because I'll ask for somebody and it says, I'm sorry, but we lost him this past year, and that's hard. Even though I knew him or her for a couple of years, they've been part of my family down there, and so it's a good feeling, practice for 4 nights, and then feast day comes and you're all ready for this whole thing, and you go and you dance all day, and it's hot, and people ask you, how do you do it? How do you do it? I said, you have faith in yourself. I said, and you're not just dancing for yourself, and you're not just dancing just to dance. I said, people have come to you. I said, they have asked you to remember them in their prayers. They give you their intentions. I said, every step you take, I said, is a prayer for somebody. I said, the songs that they sing, I said, you feel it. I said, and at the last dance, no matter how tired you are, when the drummer flips the drum and that new beat comes on, I said, something just, makes your feet even go higher, and you're still going at it, and
Right.
it's a good feeling, and then finally when the song is over, you can breathe, and you say, I did it, and I think one of the saddest years for me was when one of my very, very good family, Miss Mary Martin, passed away. I said, she was kind of like a mom to me. I knew them very well, and that year, after she had passed, the last dance, I just cried my eyes out, because she was the one that brought me down here. She was the one that told me, come down and dance with us, and it, just those tears came down, but it was good tears, because I knew that she was there with me and she was pushing me, so that's coming from a dancer's, point of view, and you go home, and you feel good, and you give blessings to your family, you give blessings to your relatives when this is over, because that's the way we do things here in our pueblos.
Yeah, and coming from Cochiti, when we get people like Chris who come from other pueblos who join us, we really appreciate that, because they're there with us to the 4 nights in the kiva of practice, and the kiva is a container of heat and sweat and people, working out, and it's in the spirit of belief that I think all of this takes place for us in the community. And of course, on the day of the dance, they tell us that in our community that we are really reenacting the coming out of the sipapu, when we go up the step ladder on top of the kiva and we're carrying cornmeal to pray with and down into the ground, it is like going into the next world. And we came from inside this hot sauna, you could call it. People are sweating and all of that. But I'm sure, Chris, you probably lose a few pounds before that.
Yes.
Day too. So that on the day of the feast, not only is your body ready for it, you've lost some weight, your condition, but your heart is in the right place. And so when we step out into the plaza on that day, it is like beginning a new world, leaving the old one behind and setting out on that adventure. And so anyway, it's much appreciated, Chris. I just want to tell you that we get people from Isleta, have relatives down there from Santa Clara, from Laguna, from Santa Clara, Zia even, and just, well, you know how many people come, Chris. But the dance itself on the plaza in Cochiti, because I'm an elder now and involved in all these traditions and stuff, we actually count the dancers. And each year, because we know Chris is coming, we lay down a feather for him to be a participant. Even this is the first night. We have 5 nights that the drummer and the singers go in, and the dancers come in 4 nights before. And so on the very first night, we count all the people who are going to dance. And usually the male dancers usually are around, in Cochiti, 140 thereabouts. The female dancers, because even more so, because sometimes we have as many as 2-3 partners in this. We call it the corn dance. Maybe people are familiar with some of your paintings there, but the dance itself on the plaza at any one time is probably easily over 300 dancers in Cochiti. And then the chorus group, probably another 50 or 60. So we're not talking about a small group. But boy, you look at Santo Domingo on their day, August 5th, Santo Domingo is one of the largest pueblos. Holy cow, they probably have 500 dancers all at one time on the plaza, probably 120 singing group in the singing group. So we are talking about an annual feast day that is involving of elders, parents, children as young as maybe 6-7 years old are dancing and so forth. And of course, Santa Clara, you've got 2 or 3 dance groups that are happening in your pueblo. So it's quite an event. So all that many to feed too at the feast day table.
It's really interesting that you said that, because I've been to both Santa Clara and Cochiti for feast days, and I was really blown away to see how many dancers there are, because the feast days down in Isleta are, I guess they kind of control the numbers. They don't let as many people dance for our feast days. So we often only have like maybe 10 from each kiva, 10 men and 10 women from each kiva come out and they dance. So it was really interesting, because I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, is that all Pueblo people are the same. And we all practice the same, we all have the same practices, but we're all really different. We all have our own way of doing things. And it was really interesting to be able to see both villages just have a feast day that's completely different from what I'm used to and what I've grown up seeing. So any specific memories that you guys have around dance or feast days or anything like that you would like to share? And I know, Alden, I know you you're kind of like me. You left the Pueblo for a while and you were going to school. I know I talked about it a little bit where I missed home, so I created this exhibit. Luckily, I have the space to be able to create an exhibit. What was that feeling like, being away from home and then returning home and be able to partake in the dances and feast days again?
Well, of course, being away from home, especially around feast day, For me, it was always like, okay, a part of me is missing, or a part of me just doesn't feel right. I'm not there to participate. I'm not there to, spend time with family and see the, people, friends, old friends that, come back for feast day. And I know, like, when I was younger, it was, we would have like preparations at my grandmother's house. All the family would come over and they would mix the dough for the bread. And I remember my mother and my aunts would be intently watching my grandmother, because she never used a recipe. She always took, a cup and, just was dishing out the ingredients, and everybody's, watching her to see, okay, she took, 7 cups of this and 2 cups of that. And, they would mix the dough, and then the next morning, it was all hands on deck. My uncles and I would be starting the fire in the outside oven, and they would let the fire burn for a little bit, and then my grandmother would either throw a piece of corn husks or almost a trash bag, paper sack into the oven, and she would look at it to see how fast it burnt or got brown. And she would say, oh no, we need to add a little bit more wood to it. Or, oh no, it's good now. So they would clean out all the ashes. And then everybody would, we'd have a train of people would carry 2 loaves of the dough, and they would get put into the oven. And, we'd wait around, we'd have a snack or something and wait around for the bread to be done. And once the bread was done, oh man, they would open that little oven door, and the smell of the fresh bread would just hit you. And it was always that smell going back into the house, like, and there was nothing like, cutting up one of those first loaves of bread, again, putting butter on it, and oh man, that taste and that smell was, it's heaven. And for us here in Santa Clara, we have a smaller feast. We call it the warm-up feast, June 13th. It's kind of a smaller feast. And for us, that's kind of okay, we can see feast day on the horizon. So that's where, I guess, for myself, I know, okay, it's coming. I should prepare myself. I start looking at my regalia, the different parts, and okay, if I need to make any alterations, or I need to get, this and that, the other. But once, kind of end of July, August 1st rolls around, then, the anticipation starts building from there. Our feast, our Pueblo is kind of a, small, quiet community, but as the days get closer, there's new activity. There's, you can feel the excitement. There's nothing like, going into the kiva for that first time for practice. The sights, the smells, there's nothing like that damp earth smell inside the kiva. And then it's always nice to, see those old friends that live off the reservation, and, they come back for feast day. And then again, hearing the drums, the songs, there's nothing like it. What's that saying? You feel it in your bones. And so you don't just that, you just get overcome with that anticipation as feast day approaches. And then once the morning of feast day, it's always, for me, it's always difficult to sleep the night before. As much as I try, it's just, I can't sleep. But the waking up that morning, the first thing they tell us is to go bathe in the river. So for me, that's kind of the first, that's what gets the day started, is just, getting into that water, getting washed, getting, that kind of gives you the energy. Okay, now I can get the day going, let's get it going. And then again, walking into the kiva, the different activity, the sights, the sounds, you're getting dressed, you lay out all your stuff. You're never in a hurry. You always, have to do things slowly, and you do it, they tell us do it the right way, make sure you tie your stuff up, and so it's always getting that done. And then, the ladies arrive a few hours later, and, everybody starts getting ready, and, so there's nothing like it.
One of our
Always have to remember to go use the bathroom before you get everything on.
Right. One of the memories that I have when I was younger, and dance here at Santa Clara was his grandfather. His grandfather Lawrence had a truck, and he would go from house to house and pick all of us up, all the cousins up. He would start with one place and pick up the cousins. We all used to get in the back of the truck. He'd go to my grandpa's house, pick me up, and then go down further down to my godparents' house, pick up my cousins there. And he would just, take us all to practice, and then we would be dropped off at the Kiva. We all jump off in the back of the truck and we will all go in. And we were probably maybe 12, 13, 14 years old at that time, And I remember that memory, it's still embedded in me where my Uncle Lawrence would pick up all the kids, and take us to practice. That was an exciting part,
One of the features, I guess, that has come along maybe many years ago already, but it's the carnival that's sort of attached to the feast day. And in some pueblos they have Ferris wheels and all sorts of the zipper and you name it, along with all kinds of stands, for hamburgers and hot dogs, Rosie's hamburgers and so forth. And one of my memories is that my cousin, with her own home, at the end of the day, when they finally finished washing dishes about 9 o'clock at night, they decided to have really nice hamburgers, very fresh from the stands down the road. And so they sent a couple of the kids over with some money and they bought the hamburgers. And on the way home, my dog took them away from the two kids. And so, that was a heartache, a heartbreak for everybody because they were anticipating these nice juicy hamburgers, to get a switch from the stews and stuff. But they never let me forget about my dog. I was just a kid then at that time, and the dog's name was Tamba. And every year, my cousin, until she passed away, used to remind me at feast day, remember your dog ate our hamburgers.
Yeah, that reminds me of another feast food must have is a snow cone. And that's the other thing that, it's a must have,
Even though, it's a feast day, there's still protocol that we follow in our home when my grandma was alive. So usually when the feast day was over and the men came home from the kiva, like we would come home at the dancers, the first thing that we would do is we would sit at the table because by then all the guests are gone, it's just family. So all the men were to sit down first and eat while wives and aunts and grandma would serve the men at the table, Well, one year my uncle was dating a red-headed Texan woman. And some of us knew about her, but grandma didn't know about her and my aunt didn't know about her. And she came bursting into the door, and said, howdy, everybody, howdy, and she came down and everyone was just looking at her. So who is she, And she came in and she sat down at the table. She scooted herself next to my grandpa and my uncle, the one she was dating. And my uncle was just like, didn't know what to say, And in our language, all the women are standing in the kitchen. They're who is she? Who does she think she is? Doesn't she know it's only the men? How do we tell her, And, she just said, she chit-chat. And finally, my uncle had no choice but to tell us who she was, And finally, the other uncle told her, we have a protocol here, it's time for the men to eat. We have to let them eat. Oh, that's okay, honey. And she grabbed onto my uncle. She sat there. So we just let her, stay there and she ate, But as time went on, she, after my grandma and then had passed away, they were still together and she became a pretty good part of feast day, She was willing to help. She knew the protocol now and she knew what to do, And she became an asset after all. But that was one of the funniest introductions at our house. I mean, my grandma's mouth just dropped, because who is she? Who's this redhead, Anglo woman,
I bet you everybody is really pointing at her with their lips too.
Exactly. But funny things like that happen at feast day,
Oh, well, sure.
I really like that you brought up the carnivals, because I kind of forgot about that whole part. And one of my favorite things is the feast burgers. That's
Mhm.
one of the things I judge Pueblos on, is how good their feast burgers are. And that's the best feast burger stand. So I'm really glad you brought that up. And then when you said that, I could smell those little kids running around with those stink bombs, always throwing them at each other. That's one of the most distinct smells from feast day, and that I didn't never would have thought of unless you brought that up. So we're getting close to we're getting close to the end actually. So I got maybe one more question for you. What would you like people to know about your community and your homes? And you've all said so much already. It's like, I don't know what more you could share. And then we can let our audience ask questions that they may have some questions to ask. So what would you all want to share about yourselves, about your community? And I know, Dr. Sweeney, you didn't mention it, but I know you're saying your wife is a great granddaughter of Tonita Pena. So I know you guys were all really excited to talk about the painting. So I don't know if that's something you might want to talk about.
Tonita Pena was my grandma. My mother, Hilaria, was her first daughter. She was the eldest daughter of her. So I think my grandma was married 3 times. She married a Chavez, and that was where my mother came from. She had a brother named Richard, and then her husband passed away, and so she remarried again, and she married someone named Herrera. And as far as I know, there was only one.
Joe H. Herrera, you
H.
probably
Herrera.
know him, Chris. He's quite
Yeah.
a politician. Joe H. Yeah.
And then he passed away. Then she remarried Epitacio Arquero, who was her last husband. And that's where all the kids came. Uncle Sam, Aunt Margaret, Aunt Siri,
Tola.
Aunt Victoria. There was 4 kids.
Yeah. And Tonita was from San I,
Yes.
San Alfonso, a Tewa person who lived here in Cochiti when, and she was way ahead of her time as an artist. It was during the days of the Santa Fe Indian School, male artists for the most part. But Pablita, I'm sure, was somewhat contemporary, or maybe a little bit later, but the 2 of them are really quite outstanding in terms of taking the lead in women, venturing out the Pueblo community, the stereotype of being a good Pueblo woman. But I think the 2 ladies really are exemplaries of people stepping, beyond the limits of what normally had been for ladies up to that point in time. So we really are proud of Tonita Pena and what she's done.
I like to add that I didn't really get to know her. I was probably about 5 years old when she passed. So all I remember is us grandkids being up there where they lived, and us being gathered, and they say, you need to go see your grandma and pay your last respects. And that's all I remember. I was 5 years old. So I'm really sad that I didn't get to know her, but I hear a lot about her now, and I am just so proud that she was my grandmother. And our kids are very proud too.
Thank you for sharing that. So you guys would like to share anything about yourselves that you want everybody to know about your communities, about your homes, what you do? Chris, I know you're a weaver.
Yes, I'm a weaver. Growing up with my grandparents from Santa Clara, that's where I gained all my Tewa language, knowledge, culture, and traditions from them. I lost my father when I was like 1 year old, so I never got to know who my father was from the Apache side, although I did know who my relatives were. And we grew up mainly in Dulce for the, you know, my grandparents were government workers for the agency up in Dulce, so that's where we were at. But every now and then we came down to Santa Clara, and that's when I got to know all my cousins, you know, who were down here, and I learned about the culture here, you know. And at times it was difficult, you know, because some things that we do down here are the opposites of what the Apaches do up there. And I used to struggle with that. I used to struggle with, you know, how do I identify myself with, you know, as an Apache or as a Pueblo. And over the years, I talked to one of my uncles, and in the Apache way, he kind of stepped in once my father was gone. So he became kind of like my father, and I would talk to him. And we lost him this past January, God rest his soul. But he told me, he says, Christopher, when you are with your people down at Santa Clara, you do what they ask of you. When you come up here to Dulce, you do what we ask of you. That will make your life a lot easier. There's no fighting with each other, you know. You are who you are, you know. And I thought to myself, that was simple. That was the most simple answer, and it made sense, you know. So during that time, I used to ask my grandmother from Dulce how to do bead work, and I picked it up. And then I asked my grandmother here from Santa Clara to work with clay. She taught me pottery. So those were my two parts of working with clay and with beads. And I went to high school at St. Catherine's, and then I took painting, and I was under the guidance of Mr. Bob Chavez, God rest his soul, from Cochiti. He was my art teacher. And I did a lot of artwork. One year we had a spring art show, and Mr. Chavez asked me, he says, you saw one of your paintings? I said, yeah. I talked to the lady. He says, well, do you know who she is? And I said, no. I said, that's Kathleen Kennedy from the Kennedy clan. She lives here in Santa Fe. I said, okay. You know, it didn't dawn on me until way later on, you know. I was talking about it with a friend of mine from New York, and he just happened to be part of the Kennedy clan. And he says, yeah, that's my aunt. I said, really? He says, yeah, that's, you know, relations to the John F. Kennedy family. I said, she has my painting somewhere, you know, so, you know, somewhere, wherever she lives now, she has, you know, one of my paintings, you know, so I kept that up. And then about 11 years ago, I always wanted to learn how to do weaving. So I started learning how to weave Pueblo belts and the rain sash belts that we use. And basically what I do now is I teach at the Poe Culture Center in Milwaukee. And I take care of all the instructors that I recruit to come and teach a class. And at the same time, I teach a weaving class. You know, here's, this is our traditional colors of belt, which is the red, black, and green. And this is what all the women are required to wear when they dance. This one here is more of a contemporary, more of a modern style. You know, nowadays women, when they ask me to make a belt, you know how women are, they have to match. They match their material with their belt, with their scarf and everything, you know. So this one was requested, and then they backed out the last minute. So this is what I call my Coach T belt, because it has pumpkin and turquoise in it. You know? I like that, you know. So now I'm also a teacher, you know. I'm also involved with the language. I used to teach language at the public schools in Milwaukee to the elementary kids. And I'm very strong on that. You know, it's very important for the youth to start learning our language. You know, it's slowly dying away. I always used to tell my students, you need to learn the language so you can sing the songs. You know, and one of my examples about learning the language is I would tell them, I says, okay, when we have Buffalo dance, I said, this is how you sing it. You know, you say, I tell them, said, that's how you want to sing it. Because if you don't learn the language, I say, you're going to be singing it like this. The buffaloes are coming, the buffaloes are coming, coming, coming down the hill. And they laugh. And I said, don't laugh, because that's how it's going to be. If you don't learn the language, that's how you're going to sing the songs, you know. And the ancestors won't know what you're talking about because they only know Tewa, I said. And the animals know Tewa, I said. So it's very important. So at the same time, while I work at the Post Center, I have several students who are members of Pueblo. And they come into my office a lot and they'll ask me, they'll call me Matt, which is uncle. I says, Matt, how do you say this? You know, how would you say that, you know? So I have a little poster. I made a picture of a grandfather sitting down on the floor and he's pointing. And what I did was I made a bubble, a conversation bubble coming out from his mouth. And on the top, I put "Tasidona," which is Grandpa says. And then I put a phrase in there. So they asked me, what does that say, you know? So every week I change it. And I tell them, use this phrase with each other. You know, tell each other this phrase. One week it's Napio can, come here. Other is Hanabio, what are you doing? Wepio men, where are you going? And just phrases, you know, learn how to use phrases, not just one word. And they said, well, I have a dictionary. A dictionary doesn't teach you how to speak. Phrases do. So I'm very strong on having the youth learn the language and learn the craft. That's my goal.
That's great.
Anybody else would like to share anything about themselves or their community?
Well, I'd like to invite the guests that we have to come to a feast day. You know, we have feast days in every Pueblo just about, along the Rio Grande in particular. And the Pueblo Indian Culture Center in Albuquerque have a website and they have dates for feast days and so forth. And when people come to the Pueblo on a feast day, you know, we like to see variety. It's a validation, I think, of the world's diversity. And so when you come, you might feel a little bit out of place because this is a native place and there's protocols and the whole bit. But we know that, you know, we know that when strangers come into our place, you know, they really are the validation of the diverse world in which we live. And so the blessings that we attain on that feast day is for everybody. It's not just for me and myself and my family. It begins recognizing the whole world and the need that there is for prosperity, but mostly for peace in the world. And so my grandmother used to tell me that the drum beat that we use, Chris, that one big drum in the Pueblo when we dance, after a while, it makes all the dancers' hearts beat as one. And my most distinct memory in recent time is that there was a koshari, you know, the guys that are society guys that dance around, who was wearing a pacemaker. And while in the middle of the dance, he just passed out. And, you know, that was a very serious event. And we had the emergency people come in and the whole bit got carried off. And the only thing that the doctor could figure out was the dance, the drum, the beat of the drum overrode his whatever the pacemaker was doing, because it validated for me in a very personal way. This guy was my lieutenant governor a couple of years back when I was serving, and so I was pretty close to him, but we almost lost him. He did survive, but because of what happened to him really validated something that we know already, you know, but in almost a scientific way. So I guess that's what I want to share. Anything?
I like to share that I was born and raised in Santa Fe, and I didn't move back till I was out of high school. But my earliest recollection of feast day is when I was about 16 years old. I had never participated in a dance. I was a city girl. I was too good. Not really, but I loved watching the dancers. And most of the time I was there helping my mom feed people and doing that sort of thing. But one feast day on my 16th, I was 16 years old, I decided I'm going to dance. So I told my mom, and she was looking at me. She says, "What's wrong with this girl?" And so she got my custom ready. She got everything ready for me. I had to borrow moccasins from my mom. They were kind of too small, but I still wore them anyway. And didn't even practice. I just went to the kiva and got my tabita and danced. And what I remember most is, you know how they have the leaders, the men in front and then the lady that follows. They placed me behind the first lady. And I was just blown away. I said, why did they put me way up here? But anyway, I danced and all I can say, I'm sorry. When I got home, my grandmother came and she hugged me and she told me, "Oh, I didn't know you could dance like that. I didn't know it was in you to do that." And she just hugged me and held me. And she gave me her belt. She gave me her belt, and it was a really long belt, but I still have it to this day. But that's my memory of my first time I ever danced. It's just so special.
There's
Thank
there's
you
so
so much
many
for that.
there's so many memories I think that we all have, you know, and a lot of them are special, you know.
Mhm.
One of them that I remember was just before, a couple years before pandemic. Well, grandma was gone, and my aunt wasn't here yet. She was still in Albuquerque, and my cousins were dancing. They came from Louisiana, and usually when they dance, my aunt's here to dress them. While they were here, and there was nobody else. There was nobody else to dress them. So my cousin asked, "Well, can you dress us?" I said, "I'll try my best, you know.
Oh.
If I can remember, you know, how things go on." I said. So that was a year that I got both my cousin and her daughter dressed, you know, wrapping the moccasins, putting the wraparounds on there, putting the belt on the right way, making it tight, you know, making sure that the manta's on the right side, tight on the right side. Everything, you know, I had to go to the whole thing, you know. And my aunt finally showed up after I got them dressed, and she said, "Who dressed you?" I said, "Kristen." I said, "He did." He goes, "Yeah, he did a good job," you know. So, you know, I remember that was the last time my cousins that came from Louisiana to dance, you know. And they always come before, you know, but since pandemic they haven't been here, and they've been wanting to come home so bad. But the Pueblo's still close even for them, because they're considered outsiders from out of state, even though they're tribal members, you know. But yeah, I remember that day I got the dress, you know. I was pretty proud of myself.
Good for you.
Yeah, that's one thing I sometimes, you know, keep in mind as well, is that I have two daughters. So, you know, okay, well, one of these days, you know, I might have to, you know, get them dressed or help them out. And, you know, it'll be a first time learning experience for all of us.
Well, I really appreciate everything you guys all said. This is one of the things I wanted to do, and I wanted this exhibit to do, and even this conversation to do, is evoke a lot of emotion. And I'm really glad you told that story, because you have me tearing up thinking about that, and thinking about the memories that I have, and you bringing up your daughters. I'm like, I have my two babies. They haven't been able to go home because of the pandemic. They haven't visited their home, their homeland. So it's like, I'm excited for them to eventually go down, and I hope everything calms down and ends so I can go eat at your guys' house. So go visit you guys and see you guys in person, shake your hands, give you guys hugs, because I'm just so grateful that you all participated in this, because this meant so much to me to be able to share this with people. I mean, people that might not be able to go home, that might be living here in Minnesota or even someplace close in Wisconsin or one of the Dakotas, because it's like we miss it and we want to go home, but at the same time we can't right now. And even people back home aren't able to practice their feast days or anything like that. So I'm really glad that all this emotion is shared and all we're bonding, we're becoming family in that manner, and I'm really grateful for that. Before we ask anybody, if you guys are okay staying on a little bit longer to answer questions, if anybody has questions, I want to ask you guys one quick question. What is your favorite feast food?
Mine is books, the red chili.
Mm.
Red chili and potato salad.
I
I
like
second
the,
that.
I like the green chili with the corn and the squash.
Gosh. Just choose one. Oh,
Just
gosh,
one.
man, it's like the garbanzos.
Oh,
What's the other one? Pasoli. Pasoli is a good one.
Chicos.
Chili. You can't go wrong with
Oh.
chili. Jello. Jello is another one. Gosh,
Bread pudding.
it's more like what don't you eat?
Oh,
More than-
bread pudding, you just said it there. And Isleta, I don't know if you guys make them. We have what we call little chili rellenos, but it's the crushed meat with the syrup, the sugar syrup, with green chili mixed in, and then they put the egg batter and they deep fry it.
Oh,
No.
Well, if I'm down at home for feast days, you guys are invited, and I'm gonna have my family make those.
Okay. I'm gonna hold you to that.
Okay. So I'd like to ask if anybody has any questions, if Jill or Kristen want to field some questions for everybody.
I'm fine.
Okay. Oh, I see at least one question here.
Everybody just wants to eat now.
Same here.
And everybody's gonna come down for feast day from Minnesota, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
they can use our bathroom.
A
What
lot of
art-
times you can go into a home and you can say, does Mary live here? You know, just pick a name. No. But you're here, why don't you sit down and eat, you know? So okay, so we sit down.
Somebody here is asking, when is the MIA, the Minneapolis Institute of Art Feast Day? So now you guys are gonna have to come up,
All right.
bring your families so we can throw a feast day up here.
We'll caravan up.
Oh, somebody is asking if somebody can talk about the Pueblo throws.
Oh, gallo.
Gallo.
Mhm.
Do you have that at Santa Clara?
Yes, our throws are not like on Saint days, like
Uh-huh.
for Santiago Day.
Yeah.
Our tradition here is that when a person has danced for the very first time,
Oh, okay.
then the family honors them
Uh-huh.
by having a throw. So they'll have baskets and they'll have all kinds of
Right.
goodies in there, groceries and some
Mhm.
scarves and stuff, and they'll throw that to the people. Sometimes during Easter time, when they have the throw, sometimes they'll even throw rabbits, bunnies, and baby
Uh-huh.
chicks to the crowd, you know.
Yeah.
So it's real common, you know, when someone dances for the first time, you know, the family will always
Mhm.
end up throwing for them, you know, and
Right.
sometimes it'll be their immediate family, sometimes it'll be their godparents, sometimes it'll be their aunties, sometimes it'll be the grandparents, you know. So you have a lot of family throwing for them, and you're very proud that they're stepping their foot into the Pueblo dances, you know. So you want them to continue, so you honor them in that way, you know.
what Chris described is exactly what happens here in Cochiti. But in addition, we have the Saints' Days, throw days. And so the family that has a member by that name, like Saint Anthony or
And
and
James,
Santiago and
Lorenzo.
Peter and Paul, Lorenzo. So those folks are obligated to go up on the roof after feeding all morning, the public in and out, and relatives and friends and whomever. And then they offer a gift for foot races in the plaza at noontime. And when that is over with, then the crowd that has gathered there at the plaza goes from house to house, visiting the namesake homes with that saint's name on that day. And so off the roof, usually first a bucket of water,
Then
usually
bread.
dirty water, and then bread, nice oven baked bread, and then thereafter anything you can imagine, from towels to Kleenex to fruits, and
Potato
vegetables,
chips
potato
and-
chips, even Coke cans that sometimes
Watermelon.
open the head or something, And so the people are below the house, as you can imagine, and these gifts are coming off the rooftop, and quite a bit, so that there's a lot of hollering, a lot of splashing with water and so forth. But until the family runs out of their distribution of the gifts. And so the whole idea behind this is that the saint has blessed the family, that special person who carries the name Saint Anthony or Tony or Antonio or Anthony. And so in return, the family is obligated to share the gifts of what the saint has provided for the family in the course of the year. So that is quite an event, and we have that happening from about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and depending on how many names are celebrating in the village for that particular saint, it's over well after sometimes. So it's quite an event.
I can add to that too, because I mean, if the further west, I feel like the further west you go, like towards Laguna and Acoma, the more dangerous it kind of gets. Because I've been to Laguna where they'll throw boxes of laundry detergent off the roof, or they're throwing pottery. That's one of the most terrifying things to see. As a museum person, it's terrifying to watch a piece of pottery fly across the air into somebody's hands from a roof, or even at their dances. Some of their dancers will come out and they'll throw the pottery up into the air for people to catch. So that's always, I don't know how to describe it. I'm always afraid to either get hit by a pottery or to watch a piece of pottery break. It's so scary, but it's one of the most exciting things. But our throws at Isleta aren't as scary as those. They're pretty tame. Every now and then
my
somebody will throw a
aunt's-
rooster.
My aunt learned her lesson one year. She went to Acoma and they threw a pot. Well, she had her rings on, and when the pot hit the rings, it cracked. So next time she went, she didn't wear her rings. And she didn't get a pot.
Didn't throw it to her.
So if you're going to that Laguna, Acoma, don't wear rings, especially for throw day.
Mhm.
I think we have one
No,
more
think
question,
about
and that
Mary.
question. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but
Oh, I was gonna say there's one more question. It's are dances open to the outsiders?
some of the dances are here in Cochiti. There are dances that are private, where we have closed village, and there's signs that are there that, but I think, again, the Pueblo Culture Center really has a good listing of the dances and the locations, the time of the year, or even the exact date sometimes when they are open to the public. And as I mentioned, we have dances year round, some in January, some in February, some in March, and throughout the year. I think the only time we don't have anything that's open is in the month of this month here, October, Otherwise, we always have something open here.
Yeah, I think for the most part, most of the dances are open to the public. The ones that are not, you'll definitely know, you will know that, they are not open to the public. So, if you're ever in the area, you can come on down and watch.
All we ask is that you follow the guidelines that are posted up, like no cameras, no videotaping, no sketching, your eyes are your cameras.
Right. And then the one thing is, whatever you do, do not pull your cell phone out. I mean, every feast day it happens, no matter how many signs are out there, no cell phones allowed. There's a zero tolerance policy. There's always that one person, will pull out their phone, and it gets taken, and once it gets taken, that's it. You're not getting it back. So at the end of the day, I know some people will have the tribal officials will have a bag full of cameras that have been confiscated. So yes, that's the one thing I will emphasize is if you come watch, whatever you do, leave your cell phones in your car, or let it ring. Just do not touch it.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. I've watched my dad walk up to tourists that come to one of our dances with the camera, and if asked them to put the camera away, they wouldn't. And eventually I watched my dad grab their camera, pull all the film out, and take all the film out and expose it to the sun, so I wouldn't be able to use it anymore. So it's that's a very serious offense, I guess you could say.
Yeah, some of the best yeah, some of the best pictures I have are from cameras that we confiscated from tourists. We developed those.
Or they videotape with the phone.
Well, nowadays, of course, it's even more, with everyone carrying a cell phone, it's hard to and then of course the recordings that people do, they sit there in the crowd and you can have your recorder going and so forth. And of course, that's a no-no and hard to control sometimes, but we still insist on it.
So I think that's just the one thing that we ask when you come out is, have respect for our guidelines and our rules and regulations. And, like my cousin said, just leave your cell phone in your car, and you'll be safe. You're there to enjoy yourself. You don't want to mess up your day by having your phone taken away, So that's number one, have respect for our ways of lives.
Okay, and one question that keeps coming up, and I'm not sure if you all are comfortable in answering it, is how are your communities doing during this time with during the pandemic, and how are they coping and all that? And it's up to you if you'd like to answer it.
I think Santa Clara, we're doing quite well. As soon as I think after a month, we just went into lockdown, and all the pueblos pretty much went down the same time. And what that means is that only members or residents that live in the pueblo are allowed to go in and out. So outsiders can't come in. And I think their idea behind that was basically for the safety of the youth and the elders at that time. And that was before we had any kind of vaccination. It was difficult, it was frightening for everybody because we didn't know where this was going. We had the fear of going shopping, even to go shopping, you keep on watching the news, which wasn't any help. You see the numbers climbing up and up, so you worry about your families, you worry about your pueblos, and it was a sad time because over that time, I get word of mouth from people and my friends from the southern pueblos who have gone, and sometimes whole families, mothers, fathers, and a son, have all passed away of COVID, and it scares you, So with the vaccination, I think Indian country has probably the highest vaccination, people, because we've been through smallpox, we've been through all these other disease many, many years ago. So we kind of know what it's like in a way from talking to our elders when they were around, so we want to ensure that we're safe, and our guards here have been very helpful in letting us in and watching our subdivision where I live here at Santa Clara, and it's been helpful because to some extent it's a good thing because I don't have people knocking on my door, we're selling this, or would you like to subscribe for satellite dish, when it was open, people will come by, so now it's limited. The guards have been, again, like I said, very helpful, and I laugh because some of them we've seen from the very beginning. They were there, and I see like myself, and I see other people when we come back from town, we give them food, take them pizza, or we take them lava burger, and I said, I need to get a hold of what's his name, Ricardo Cate, and have him do a cartoon of before pandemic and after. The security guard, skinny as a stick, and after people feed him all year round, he puts on the weight, But they've been real good, And here at Santa Clara, it's kind of hard because we have so many enters and exits in our Pueblo here. So we have how many? One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 7 entrances and exits, because we're so spread out, and it's sad when you pass by the different pueblos and it has Pueblo poles, and but I think in our case, we lost several people here at the Pueblo. No, it's sad, but I think our officials are doing the best that they can to ensure the safety for their people, Coach T.
Coach T, I think we did very well by comparison to some of the pueblos you're talking about south of us here. To be more exact, we lost one person to COVID, and then we had, I think we were around 80 cases or so, but that was due to, the numbers that are quite low in comparison to the other pueblos down south. That was due to our really strict lockdown that we had, we closed all the avenues into the Pueblo except for the one place that has a checkpoint. And so we still have a checkpoint today, and we still adhere to masking, discouraging out-of-state travel, essential visits into town only, groceries and work has been permitted again.
Or if you're a farmer.
Or farmers,
Yeah.
across the river and so forth. But other than that, workers have a special decal on their windshield. They can come in and out. And we have a national monument here, the Kashakatuli, or the Tent Rocks Monument, that has been closed all during the time that we had that. And so we've been very fortunate. And we just came from Santa Fe today, and she got her booster shot. So our vaccination rate here in Pueblo is quite high as well. I think we're probably around, 90%.
I don't know.
But our tribal leaders demanded, it was not, it was mandatory, and so we have a high rate of vaccinations as well. So we've been very fortunate, but it's also been very lonely because we are a gathering people. Let's tell it as it is. If we're not dancing, if we're not together in the plaza, there's weddings, there's funerals, there's baptisms, there's this and that, and then there's bingo, and any reason to get together, we got together, and that's just the nature of Pueblo people, I guess. When you look back in ancient times and look at the close buildup of Chaco Canyon and Mesa Verde, Bandelier, people were really close, clustered together, almost like bees. And so sometimes I think we have that in our DNA to have to be together and so forth. But anyway, any other questions, I guess?
I think that was the last question.
All right.
All right.
So I guess we can close out. I'm really happy to be able to finally see you. I've emailed and texted with you, and it's so awesome to see you. And I'm really appreciative for this time that we've had together. And I really happy to be able to share this with folks here up in Minnesota, because I know a lot of people don't necessarily know about Pueblo people. A lot of I've always heard of us talked in the past, like we're no longer existing, but we're very much existing. So I'm really glad to be able to share that with a greater community. That's always been my goal as a museum professional, is to be able to share my people from back home. And I'm really glad that you all are willing to do that as well. So from the bottom of my heart, how for being here and participating with me. Thank you, and I guess I will let you guys go. You guys are free to go back to what you're
Go
gonna
eat.
do tonight.
We're all
It's good
hungry
to see
now.
you, Dr. Swina.
Good to see you, Chris. Good to meet you, sir.
It was nice to meet all of you.
And good to meet all of you too. Juan, is finally we met. Yeah.
Yes,
Fine.
and I hope we get to see each other soon, or be able to go to each other's feast days, and that would be great. That would be awesome.
Yes.
You're all invited to come to my house for feast day or anytime.
All right.
Jill, Kristen, anything to close? Anything to say?
This has been a wonderful night. Thank you, everyone, for enriching our lives. And we learned so much, and this just filled my heart. So thank you so much.